Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 2023 first installment of the Preccelerator U workshop series. Today we have one of our mentors. I call him a master storyteller. He may call himself something differently, but Tony is a Renaissance man of many talents. He is a friend of our ecosystem. And I'm really pleased today to present to you Tony Winders. Tony, take it away.
Thanks, Len. Hello, everybody. And thank you for allowing me to share some of my knowledge about brand narrative and storytelling. Before we get into the content, each of you have taken a portion of your day here to be with us and to dip into this conversation. I would just like to offer to anyone, whether you just unmute and come on and talk about why you're here and what you'd like to get out of today. It's a very specific topic in marketing, and so if anyone wants to throw it in the Zoom chat or just kind of offer up what you hope to get out of today's session, I'd be interested to know what led you to our door.
Don't be shy.
Can you hear me? It's Christine.
Oh, hey,
Hi, Christine.
Got you.
Hi, guys. Sorry, I have to multitask. My schedule got all ruined today. But yeah, I was excited to learn how storytelling can be used in marketing to stop doing what everybody else is doing. You know, talking about how great they are and how they have the panacea for all ills and really focus on what separates us, which I hope you'll do.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anybody else want to throw their hat in the ring and kind of why you're here and what you hope to learn?
Me personally, this is Cody. I'm not sure if I'm being seen here. I've actually always been told that I was a great storyteller and everyone loved my story. So I'm interested to see a real expert, kind of tell a story, and really just hoping to, learn and soak up anything that I can from you.
Okay, very good. Yeah, cool. Anybody else? Okay, well, we can move on. Well, by way of introduction, I am a longtime marketing professional and expert. I consider myself an expert in marketing strategy and messaging and positioning. I have a long career in starting in entertainment publicity way back in the 90s, and then started the first digital marketing agency in the world, if you can believe that, in 1995 in Santa Monica. It was called Interactive Agency Inc., which we later rebranded as iAgency, and did that up through the dot-com years, and then spent several years as the head of marketing at advertising tech platforms like Search123 and ValueClick. And my last corporate job was at a company called GumGum, which is still in the market. And through all of those experiences, I created a formula really for B2B tech marketing, which I've employed for hundreds of clients since then. And right now I'm building my second agency, which is called the Winders Group. And it is an agency collective hybrid. So we've made a business out of standing up on-demand marketing departments for tech companies, which is going really well. And part of what we do is storytelling and brand narrative, and we do a lot of content creation that drives leads into mostly SaaS-based technology sales organizations. So that's kind of what I'm up to right now, and I'll give a little more color on myself as I kind of peel back on some of my own story here in a moment. But that's kind of where I'm coming from and who I am. And truth be told, I don't consider myself a great storyteller per se. I think I'm a good marketing strategist, but one reason when Len offered for me to give a workshop, one reason I chose the topic on getting your story straight and creating a brand narrative is that I think storytelling is really hard, and I don't know that I'm good at it. And I wanted to use this as an opportunity to sharpen my saw, honestly. And so I've learned a lot in the past few weeks in preparing for today, and I'm going to share with you what I've learned. And together, I hope we can keep it collaborative. I'll ask you to chime in and kind of give your thoughts on storytelling as we go along, but I will share a bit of what I've learned. And let's start by sharing my screen. And that will happen right now.
Got it.
Okay, got it?
Got it.
Right on. Okay. So we're here, get your story straight, how to create a compelling narrative for your brand. And just by way of other things that we'll cover today, we'll make a distinction between brand narrative and storytelling, which I think is important. And then we'll talk about how to construct a brand narrative and move into the fundamentals of storytelling and how to apply that to marketing. And then actually not just creating the story, but how do you actually tell it and get it out into the market? Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. In terms of my story, I had this idea that I wanted to share a couple of pictures from my past. And I have in mind this picture of me as a young man at my typewriter in my first job as a publicist in Hollywood. And it was black and white. And I was going to kind of tell a story around that, or ask you, like, what story does it tell? And I wasn't able to find that picture, but I did find this vision board that I created a few years ago. I did this in the context of some HubSpot sales training that I was doing. And it continues to be my screensaver and something that I just a way to kind of introduce myself. But at the very highest level, what I realized about myself is that I just want to live up to my full potential. And so I kind of thought about the values and things that are important to me and what motivates me and my vision of kind of how the world would be that I would like to see for myself. And then I surrounded it with the pictures of the people who are closest to me. So nothing really to go into too much detail here, but I can tell you that part of my story is a lifelong journey of service. I realize I'm a service person, service oriented, from the first lawn mowing business that I had to my paper route to being in the services industry. I mean, I got my BS in PR and then moved to Hollywood, where I actually got that joke. And so and then on to do even more service work as I owned my own agency. So that's something I just recognized about myself, and that is part of my story. But I try to be of service in my work to my clients, and we're bringing jobs to independent marketing professionals all over the world. And I just have a real mentality of paying it forward and being generous with your information and spreading joy. And that's who I am and what I'm about. So just by way of a quick introduction. Moving on, let's talk about storytelling related to brand narrative, because that's the first thing in my pursuit of this topic today that I realize is we need to clarify what the difference is between the two. So brand narrative is the overarching story or the message that defines a brand and the relationship that it has with its customers. So this is things like its history, its values, its goals, whereas the story and storytelling refers to the art of telling a story to engage an audience and evoke an emotion. And it communicates identity, values, benefits in a more engaging and memorable way. So we'll get into more of those distinctions, but just like to give you an example of the difference between the two, just to bring it to life. If we were to create a fictitious brand, call it Green Earth, and oops, didn't mean to go back. There we go. If we created a fictitious brand called Green Earth, that brand wanted to establish its narrative, they would maybe talk about a commitment to sustainability, its use of environmentally friendly materials, and the mission to make the world a better place. But to bring that to life, to bring that brand narrative to life, Green Earth might use storytelling and marketing, for example, creating a video about a family that uses its products, or how they make a positive impact on their daily lives and the environment. And so that, anyway, you get it. But the brand narrative, I think of storytelling as a subset of brand narrative. And we'll get into more of what all of that means as we go along, but I just wanted to make that distinction here right at the top. Now let's talk about constructing a brand narrative. How do you actually go about that? So in terms of having that strategic approach here, the brand narrative is the story or messages that a company uses to communicate its values and the personality of its brand to the audience. So it's a central building block of the company's brand strategy. It often tells where a company has come from and where it's going. It establishes credibility, and it creates a reason to believe. Now, before I put up some of the examples that I've thought of, I'd be curious to hear when you think of brand narrative and companies that have done a good job of creating a brand narrative, can anyone just offer up some examples of brands that you think uphold some of the things that I just covered in terms of like where they're actually using their values and the personality to communicate with their audience? Like what big brands come to mind? You can put it in the chat or just speak up.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, good one. Which one?
Tom's shoes.
Tom's, good one. Yep. Tesla, Lexus, Nike, Google, Apple, all coming up in the chat. So very good, very good. And some of those made my list. So Nike's "Just Do It" slogan in the company campaign emphasizes the brand's message of empowerment and self-motivation. Coca-Cola, for example, their Open Happiness campaign positions them as a provider of simple pleasures and positive emotion. Of course, who could leave out Apple, the focus on innovation and design, which is communicated through its amazing advertising and slick product launches. Patagonia came to mind for me, and their commitment to environmental sustainability and social responsibility. If you remember Dove's Real Beauty campaign, celebrating natural beauty to promote self-esteem. And Airbnb came to mind because of their message of inclusivity and the idea that anyone can feel at home anywhere in the world. So those are some good examples. I'd like to share a couple of not so famous examples from the work that I've been doing. So one of my clients that we've done some good storytelling for is called Pixels.com. And Pixels is kind of like Etsy meets Cafe Press, where they give artists storefronts to create, they can sell their art through the store and have people apply those artistic designs to any item, be it a coffee mug, a pillow, a wall print, or what have you. Has anyone ever heard of Pixels.com or been to that site?
No, sir.
No. Okay. They're a Santa Monica based company, and I'm going to just leave presentation mode and just share. I'd like to share a video with you. And if I shared my screen properly, you should hear audio. But what we did for Pixels.com is we created this campaign called Art My Way. And instead of telling the story of how the consumer could go online and have art just printed on any particular item, we decided to kind of go a layer deeper and to interview some of the artists and hear from them kind of how their work inspires the art my way, like the independent nature that's created by their ability to sell their wares through this site. We thought, what better way to show off the brand than to create this video series, which is a documentary style series of the artists speaking about their own work. So I'll play. This is I won't let this go on for the full 3 minutes, but this was one of my favorite artists that we interviewed was Jabu. He's a local painter that I think you'll like, and you get a flavor for the storytelling that we were doing to back up Pixel's brand narrative.
My name is Jabu. What I am is an activist, not an activist. Activist When I see paint flowing, that's when I'm at my happiest. If I paint, something happens within me. Creating art my way means rather than me give a certain percentage to a museum or a gallery, I'm gonna give that to organizations that are related to the kind of work that I'm creating. If I'm creating lions, wild mustangs, elephants, I want to find an organization that's saving elephants. Somebody's talking about, hey, let's go to Mars, let's find out if there's water there. Well, guess what? There's water here. There's plants here. There's living creatures here. How about taking care of the creatures that we have here?
Jabu is great. You guys were able to hear that. Okay, I assume.
Yes, we will.
Each of these artists, one whose story is more interesting than the rest, but just an example of something that I'm proud of and worked on. And then this is, I wanted to share with you one other piece of client work. This is for a client called Reach Moby. And this video has actually never been seen before, so you guys can get the sneak peek, but it's what we call a manifesto video. That last style was a docu-series kind of style of video, but in this particular piece, it's a 1 minute manifesto, which really just seeks to create the vibe for the brand and get you excited about what it is. And in this, in just like you want to learn more about them. And in this particular case, Reach Moby deals in the work of what are called launcher apps. Does anyone know what a launcher app is? So many people don't. It's for Android phones only.
Recording in progress.
And Mike, not me. Okay.
Nope,
Good.
I took care of it.
Thank you. I see Steve joined us. Hi, Steve. With Reach Moby, so launcher apps are these home screen apps, which is kind of how we're repositioning the category because people really don't know launcher apps. But ostensibly, they're making apps for your phone. And what we're really trying to communicate as part of our brand narrative is your phone is so personal to you that with these applications, you can make it an extension of you and that it is a reflection of who you are as a person. And so we're really trying to get that across through this particular manifesto video and all of the marketing that we're doing for them. But I'll just share this one with you quickly, and this will be going up on reachmoby.com later this week.
At Reach Moby, we know that out of 8 billion people, there's only one you. You're a living, breathing, free-thinking, 24/7 content consuming, health-conscious, caffeine-chugging, all-nighter you. You march to the beat of your own 808. You like to keep things vibrant and exciting. You're all about getting things done on time, every time. And you like to be at the center of everything. And between sports practices, band rehearsals, and the never-ending question of what's for dinner, you're a to-do list slaying master. That's why at Reach Moby, we believe that your phone should be as bold as you. Our team works tirelessly to help you stand out from the crowd and unleash your full potential. We build meaningful apps centered around people. Apps that connect your phone to the things that really matter most to you. Apps based on expert, rock-solid, data-backed research, combined with an acute attention to what makes you tick. Maybe you're a mom of 3, a work all-nighter, a never-missed-a-game fanatic, or someone who just wants to always be in the know. No matter what you love doing, life's too short to be anyone else. Reach Moby, home screen apps that help you be as unique and bold as, well, you.
Yeah. Doesn't that just want to make you learn more about Reach Moby? I'm so excited about that piece. So thank you for taking a look at it with me. So that's Reach Moby. And like I said, it's not Coca-Cola or Nike, but it's what we're working on in our B2B shop and something that we're proud of. So happy to share that with you. So that is that piece. And so let's get into kind of the details of how to construct a brand narrative. First of all, I like to think of the narrative North Star. And I got this term from my friend and colleague, Toby Trevarthen, who uses it in his brand narrative practice. And it's really about the why is another way that people will talk about the narrative North Star, but it's really it's designed to be the internal unifying catalyst for a company based on the alignment of authentic values, its ethos, its vision, and its mission. And so it falls out of corporate strategy, but it also guides the tone for the brand and the culture and the product or service offering. So it can also become a public-facing tagline, like Apple's North Star is think different. So sometimes it's a tagline, but in search of that narrative North Star is kind of at the heart of this brand narrative strategy work, which eventually leads to the storytelling, which we're going to get to. And so other things related here in the construction of a brand narrative are things that you are likely familiar with, like mission, vision, and the difference there for me is what the mission is kind of what we wake up to do together each day, our sort of short-term raison d'etre. And the vision is really aspirationally, how do we want to change the world? What's the kind of big audacious thing that we're here to do? So that's how I think about the difference between mission and vision. I think the brand narrative has to address values and what we stand for. And the brand voice, like if the brand could speak, what attitude would it project? And then differentiation is kind of that thing that only our company can say and no one else can. This is one of the most difficult things to tease out, especially in really competitive fields. And positioning, which I'll share with you an approach to positioning, but this is how we relate to not only our customers' needs, but the competitive landscape that lies before us. And then internal brand lenses represent the virtues that we're going to use for the purpose of building brand reinforcement and thought leadership. And so that's kind of an internal, like inward looking view of purpose, and then that's expressed externally through brand pillars, which form the basis of content marketing and storytelling. So those are some of the core elements that I think of when you're constructing a brand narrative. Again, making that distinction that this is the overarching kind of strategy that's going to feed the storytelling. And just to share with you, like a couple of tools that I like to use with respect to positioning in particular. This, if you've never seen this before, it's a kind of a classic fill in the blank, but it's really where we start a lot of our strategic work with clients, is to have, through a guided exercise frequently, to have the management team fill in the blanks here for our target audience looking for this need that they have in the market. Our company provides this product which delivers that benefit, and then unlike our competition, only our company can say this is what makes us different. So it seems really simple on its face, but I've seen this done. I've seen it done in a few minutes, but typically it takes a half a day session and then kind of gets tussled with over a period of weeks before a company can really agree on how they're positioned. So it's a great exercise for teasing out all of these things in one conversation. And then eventually, this is just an example of what we call the message house. And ultimately, those brand pillars that I spoke about can land in here as the kind of key message pillars, supported by proof points. And at the roof of the house is kind of that one most important thing that you want to say to the entire world. And underlying at the base of the house is kind of this foundation that nobody can take away from you. So there's actually two clients are intermixed here. So really the point is to show you the framework, not the content in this particular view. So that is just another tool that we use to bring these content pillars forward as the precursor to storytelling. And then did someone have a question? Oh, okay, I'm going to move on. So I wanted to share with you a great strategic narrative professional, a man named Andy Raskin. You can read his stuff on Medium, but he's been an inspiration for my own storytelling in this talk. But he talks about 5 elements of a great strategic narrative. The first being that you need to project a big relevant change in the world. So rather than talking all about yourself, talk about the undeniable shift in the world that creates big stakes and a sense of urgency for your prospects. He also talks about winners and losers and demonstrating that change in the world will create winners and losers. And he talks about what economists call loss aversion. So prospects tend to avoid a possible loss by sticking to the status quo rather than risk a possible gain by opting for change. So if you can paint that picture, then you're in better shape to win over the narrative, if you will. Then tease the promised land, create possibilities that are aspirational but also attainable. Like, what if you did these things and made these changes? What would be possible? And then introduce features as magic gifts for overcoming those obstacles to the promised land. So, for example, you're Obi-Wan furnishing a lightsaber to help Luke destroy the Empire, or your prospect is Cinderella and you're the fairy godmother casting spells to get her to the ball, that kind of thing. So what's your version of magic gifts that you can present in your brand narrative that's going to solve those obstacles for the prospect? And then finally, creating the evidence that you can actually make that come true, and how you're going to be able to overcome a skeptical audience by having the credibility to share that you can actually kind of make this story come true. So that's Andy Raskin, and that is the kind of conclusion of this idea of strategic brand narrative as opposed to storytelling per se. But before we move on to the fundamentals of storytelling, I'll pause there in case anyone has comments, questions. Would love to hear that, but otherwise we can move on. Anyone?
It's a shy crowd today.
That's all right. I can't see all of you on my 2 screens here, so.
Well, you're explaining it all so well.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I hope it's informative. So let's move from creating that strategic brand narrative to the fundamentals of storytelling. Again, I see them as very distinctly unique, and storytelling is a subset of that brand narrative. And I will start by sharing with you this picture, which is, this is a photo of the Agta people in the Philippines. It's a many thousands of year old culture in the Philippines, and they are inherently storytellers. And in this culture, the storytellers they are actually esteemed higher than the hunter gatherers. In one story that I read about that they tell is that I thought was kind of sweet. Once upon a time, the sun and the moon argued about who would light up the sky. They fought as anthropomorphic celestial bodies are meant to do, but after the moon proves to be as strong as the sun, they decide to take shifts. The sun would brighten the day while the moon would illuminate the night. And so this is one of the stories told by these Agta people, and kind of it's an example of how the storytelling that they, in this case, the sun and the moon sort of infuse these themes of cooperation and equality in the case of this particular story. But storytelling it's a universal human trait that's been around for so long. I mean, it is just so ingrained in how we communicate and interpret the world around us. And so to that end, I didn't kind of animate this slide in, but I'll just kind of reference that storytelling can be dated back for 6,000 years. It's been used for entertainment, education, cultural preservation, passing down, myths and legends from generation to generation. And as I mentioned with the AGTA, the storytellers are often the most important in the community. So, but you're also probably familiar with ancient Greece and Rome, from the stories from those cultures, and China with its folk tales. And today, of course, storytelling is a multi-billion-dollar industry in film and television and gaming and such. So, anyway, just a note on the importance and historical foundations of storytelling. And in fact, it's also scientifically proven, which I'll share in a moment. But why do we tell stories? We tell them to capture attention and to make it easier to process information. So it can reduce defensiveness. It solidifies abstract concepts. It simplifies the complex. It helps to promote and shape ideas and create social change. And I'm reminded of Ben and Jerry's political activism. And it can bring people together around a common cause or enemy. And someone mentioned Tom's Shoes as a good example of kind of their business model, and created a story into itself of how they help people who need a pair of shoes every time you buy a pair of shoes. And it inspires and motivates, and stories can change behaviors. And to the point of being scientifically proven, I'm guessing that no one has read this report on evaluating didactic and exemplar information, but I discovered this, and the University of Pennsylvania basically used this kind of transcranial direct current stimulation to decrease brain activity in regions of the brain that were associated with reasoning. And they tested 65 people, and half of the group were given messages. So they kind of decreased this brain functionality with this electric stimulation. Half of the group got messages that were framed as stories, and the other half got facts in a more didactic form. And after each message, they were asked to come up with arguments for or against the messages that they saw. For example, like the messages framed as stories were things like, Joe has never smoked cigarettes in his life. He has heart disease because he was exposed to secondhand smoke from his father. And the other half would get a more kind of didactic form, like, smokers can harm other people. Every year, a lot of non-smokers die from heart disease caused by secondhand smoke. Anyway, this study found that that in fact that it did make a difference, and that messages framed as stories help people understand the social experiences better, and they were able to kind of not only recast this back, but also when retelling stories, constructing the same patterns. And there are many other studies like this that I discovered in my research leading up to this talk. So there's scientific proof that stories, when you frame stories, that the material just sticks longer, because we're accustomed to, that's how we like to interact as socially as well. Just in terms of just wrapping up the fundamentals of storytelling, if you've never seen this kind of story arc, this is pretty well documented kind of formula for storytelling and script writing and such, and talks about the kind of inciting incident at the beginning, the rising action to a climax, and then eventually the resolution. But the essentials of storytelling in general kind of involve having the engaging plot, well-developed characters, conflict and tension, setting the atmosphere, the description and imagery, emotion, resolution, authenticity, relevance, and a unique voice. Just some characteristics for the essentials of storytelling. But I think what's more interesting is how do we create stories for the purpose of marketing? And so when I think of what that entails, it's a little different list. So the good stories told for marketing purposes are entertaining, they're believable, they're educational, they're relatable, they're organized, they're memorable, they're extraordinary. And why tell a story otherwise if not to really help make it stick in the person's mind? They're attention grabbing, they're bold and sedacious, imaginative, they're subtle, they're timely. The audience will receive a story when they're ready to receive it, and it's interactive. And we could have a conversation about each of these facets of good storytelling, but I think the words probably speak for themselves here on its face. And then in terms of the storytelling process, just knowing your audience sounds obvious, but don't forget that. You've got to define your core message before you set out to tell the story. You have to decide what kind of story you're telling. Are you trying to incite action? Are you trying to convey values or foster community and collaboration, or a story that's meant to impart knowledge or to educate? You have to then establish a call to action, very important to any kind of storytelling and marketing. What do you want people to actually do? And then it's about choosing your medium. Where are you going to tell that story? And we'll talk a little bit more about distributing stories here in a moment, but that could be through writing, speaking, audio, digital. What's the medium? And then you got to plan and structure a story. You got to write it. And as I said, we'll kind of talk a bit more about distribution and what that looks like. Finally, on the matter of using storytelling in marketing, I just grabbed this list of do's and don'ts from HubSpot, which I thought was fantastic. Do show visuals to express your ideas. Know your audience, we mentioned. Outline your plot and your core message. Be honest, go deep, make it useful, leave room for imagination. And don't use jargon or business speak. Don't focus too much on yourself or your brand. Don't leave plot holes. Don't make your characters too perfect. Don't skim over the details. Don't sell your CTA too hard, and don't overcomplicate the story. And finally, once you have a story to tell in using these frameworks and these ideas, how's anybody going to hear about it? So it's not enough just to create a good story, although I would say that good brand narrative and storytelling involves having that story be part and parcel to the product and the culture and everything about that company, living and breathing, from the receptionist to the CEO and everything in between. Your story can be communicated and needs to be communicated just through the culture of the company. But in practical terms, I like to think of both the content types and the media channels. So I'd love to hear if anyone has ideas for anything that's not listed here, but some of the ways that storytelling can take place and that we employ in our practice is everything from blog posts and ebooks to infographics and case studies. Webinars I would include in content, or any kind of event presence, sales collateral of all kinds, media relations.
Is it me or am I missing social media on this list?
I include social as one of the channels, but you're absolutely right. Social is also really a content type. Good point. That could really fit on this list.
And if I could, especially since the mediums that are being used, whether it's Facebook stories, Instagram stories, or TikTok, and how that is reformulated how we tell stories because the condensed attention span challenge.
Yes, good point. And they express themselves in words, video, and pictures, still photos too. So lots of different kind of medium playing even inside of social media. Here's my list of the media channels, and I think of them in terms of paid, owned, and earned media. So paid is any form of advertising in print, broadcast, out of home, search, social. Owned media would be the channels that you control. And this is where I would focus first if I was on a limited budget. For example, is make sure you got your story straight on your own website and your social channels, and then branch out from there with email lists if you have it. Maybe texting or calling as part of the outreach or snail mail. And then earned coverage is classically referred to as PR or media relations, so the editorial coverage. But it can also be submitted articles. It can be analyst coverage of a business or the influencers who would speak about you. So that's kind of how I think of the distribution channels. And finally, I would just encourage you to just own the brand narrative. I touched on it a moment ago. It just has to be inherent in the ethos of the company. The venture capitalist Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz fame says the company story is the company strategy. And to further on that, I'd say that conversations about brand narrative are really about the core strategic narrative. They go hand in hand, in my mind. I think that getting internal alignment is what I've seen is the hardest part of bringing brand narrative and storytelling together, is having all the stakeholders involved, really being on the same page. I've been a party to too many strategy sessions and positioning decks that once we're gone don't really get employed by the management team because there isn't alignment. So I would encourage the leaders of companies it needs to come from the top. It can't come from a marketing consultant or even necessarily the VP. The alignment has to come from the top, and everybody's got to be on that page. Stories need to be told through the eyes of the customer. That's really non-negotiable. The voice of the customer just has to be part of the narrative and the storytelling. And you've got to create the credibility. Hopefully you have it already, but anyone who's telling a story has to have credibility. All we have left is trust. And if you kind of violate that, then there's no way you're going to have, that the story can't carry you past that. And finally, you've got to budget appropriately. Everybody's coming at storytelling from probably a different resources. And in creating the story, you got to be creative. So use the channels that are less expensive if you don't have a budget. And if you do, then you're probably able to increase not only the production value, but how far that story will reach. And that concludes the sort of one-way presentation of the conversation. I'm sure that there are more things to be said and questions to be asked and dialogue to be had, but I'd love to have an informal discussion among the group here to see how that resonated with you and how we can kind of take it a layer deeper. Like, I'd love to have a conversation about what you saw and what you think it means and how it shows up in your business and how I might be of service to help you form a story for your brand, or that we could learn from one another based on any work that you're doing in this regard.
Tony or Len, is this is being recorded? Is it going to be available? I've got to go to another meeting here in just a couple of minutes. Are we able to get a copy or of the recording?
I'll answer that. So we put all of our workshops on our YouTube channel. It's labeled Preccelerator. So if you go to YouTube, just search Preccelerator and you will find all of our videos there. They take about a week from the time that we record them to the time we get them into post and then put them up.
Thanks for being here, Dennis.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It was great. Very interesting stuff.
Great presentation. Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Yeah.
Hi, Tony. I'm Dennis's brother. I also have to go on the same call. I found this presentation wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. That was good.
Indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Steve, I'm dying for your perspective. I know we didn't have a chance to connect beforehand, but knowing that your head's been in this, I'm eager to see, like, I'm really anxious to know what my blind spots are. What did I miss that would be valuable to the conversation, or what would you elaborate on, or anything?
I don't think there was so much of a miss, but there was one area that I would love to hear you address a little bit. And that's about, especially around storytelling, around perception versus reality, because there's the perception of what the story we tell, and then there's the reality. And they oftentimes in storytelling, they don't align.
Yeah.
Right? And so how do you envision addressing that so that there's greater alignment between them? Because greater alignment between perception and reality at least creates the perception of integrity or honesty. Pick the word that you want. And you didn't really address that side of it, because listen, anybody can be a good bullshit artist.
Yeah.
And just tell a story, right? And that story may have no grounding in reality, but it sounds like a good story, right? So how do you square those circles?
Man, that's a great question. I think maybe the reason that I overlooked it is because I take it on sort of faith that it has to be so honest and so authentic. Like, it's just, and so maybe I'm being naive, because you're right. This is why marketing has a bad rap, right? Because we're thought of as the bullshit artists that are spinning tales and yarns of kind of potentially deceit. So I don't know. I think that there is a world, and I have this conversation with my clients all the time, where I don't want to be dishonest or deceitful, but it is marketing. And I think that we can lead the witness a little bit, as long as we're not being inauthentic. I think you can, and also that sometimes the product's just not there yet, but the promise of what's coming, you can plant a flag out on the horizon and kind of ask everyone to run toward it too.
I mean, I'm not, just for the record, I'm not suggesting that there's intentional deceit going on, right? I just, sometimes, you get sales pitches all the time, and a lot of them seem to be too good to be true, and many of them are too good to be true. And so those that come across with an authenticity, I think, are distinguished from the rest of the pack.
Theranos comes to mind.
Good example.
I mean, and I even am involved in a stock transaction right now, and I was talking to this financier I was telling him, but the investment banker, they said this and they said that. And investment bankers are going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. That's his job, is to be that ringmaster and that promoter of the stock. So there is deceit does go on, right? Let's not kid ourselves. But I mean, that good actors in the world and some of the big brands that we spoke about, I mean, you'd like to think that they are above that, but they're not really. Look at Nike's reputation for sweatshops. I don't even know if that's true, but it's in my head as something that somehow along the supply chain that they've taken advantage of people, and maybe they've cleaned that up, and maybe it was or wasn't true, but somehow that is in my consciousness about that brand.
I mean, this could even extend to when you're coaching a startup as to how they tell their story for fundraising. For example, okay, how far do you pull the silly putty to make the story sound appealing enough so company X is going to put that, $500,000 into that, $200,000, and that might be the difference between whether they do and whether they don't, and whether your company succeeds or doesn't succeed.
Do you coach the CEOs in that way, Lynn? Where is that kind of storytelling shown up in the Preccelerator if you've got a frame of reference?
100%. So it shows up in a couple of different ways. It shows up in how they position themselves when they're doing their 30-second elevator pitch. It shows up when they're telling their story during a pitch. It shows up when they're describing what they're building to investors or to other founders or to their team. I think, yeah, and storytelling needs to be practiced. We're not all natural storytellers. Some of us are better than others. And, everybody can tell a story, but you have to practice it. And I think sometimes and that's what we spend a lot of time here is getting people who might not be comfortable in telling a story to understand what that really means.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed it a few times at some of the presentation evenings that you have where the people come and are presenting their companies that are part of Preccelerator. Some are more natural and they just tell a story about their brand. Others have a very much a rehearsed and scripted type of story, and it just doesn't flow. And there's an authenticity issue there as well.
That's right. It doesn't come across authentic. And because we live in LA, we have a lot of people who don't speak English as a first language. And so their storytelling then is embellished by their culture or by their first language. And sometimes that inhibits our ability to understand the story, or sometimes it illustrates the story in a better way. You can use that to your advantage, I think. I always go back the ultimate storytelling, and not to bring religion into the context of this, but religion is really the practice of telling stories and learning how to tell stories in an oral way. And organized religions have spent thousands of years in teaching people how to orate and tell those stories as an instructive way in how to live your life.
Well, there was no printed version of the Bible, for example, for thousands of years or for some period of time until there was the mechanism to actually print.
Right.
All stories were told orally.
That's right.
Politics comes to mind too. Like there have been some pretty fast talking.
Go down really fast.
I like look at how storytelling has elevated certain political actors, right? I mean, it's that is all storytelling. I mean, though they have to be great orators and they have to create villains and they have their protagonists. They many of them are just very good storytellers.
Yeah, or they use storytelling to advance their cause, and they do it very, very well. And what may look like it's authentic is very contrived because they're hitting messages in 30-second spots with words that evoke emotion, with words that evoke action, with words that make you think and contemplate positively or negatively. So Tony, thank you very much for your wisdom and your knowledge and your time. And
I enjoyed it very much. I learned a thing or two, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with anyone who would like to. So thank you.